All the audio examples here are available from various channels on YouTube, most of them from multiple places in YouTube. All are presented here for the purposes of education and critique under the fair use doctrine. Evidence. Yeah, I still need to do that essay on evidence. It's in the queue. Evidence, well, should make something evident. A journalist collects information, vets it, processes that information, produces evidence that they present as part of their story. An investigator collects information, processes it, and creates evidence from the information that they've collected. Even a reporter does that. But when you just take everything you're given from any source for any reason, and you bring that source in and put it out to your audience without any filters whatsoever, that is the social media equivalent, the live stream equivalent of a supermarket tabloid. Information doesn't matter. Facts don't matter. It's up to the audience to decide what they like and what they don't, what they want, what they don't. And it has absolutely no value whatsoever to trying to understand the subject, because whatever gets presented could be real, it could be completely fabricated. Is there anything wrong with that? No, actually. As someone who really wants to take the subject seriously, it can get in the way if you're confused about whether someone is presenting real information or just making up crap. But in the end, that's the way life is. You have to deal with it. You have to filter for yourself what's there. So let's have a look at audio analysis 100, Introduction to Finding the Most Horrendous Fabrications. Enjoy! I've been sitting on one of these for quite a while. The other was brought to me rather recently. We'll get to those at the end. There's a whole range of recycled audio presented as new evidence these days. Some, like the Mushroom Hunter, are clearly done as a parody or to bait enthusiasts with some titillating bit of supposed evidence, or as a joke to tease friends and family members, perhaps. There are many essentially innocent reasons such things are presented, but sometimes it's presented by an enthusiast in hopes of gaining some sort of street credibility, dredging up something they believe to be so obscure that no one will ever catch them. Or maybe they just don't care if they're caught. There's always a chance that they recorded someone else call blasting near where they were. So for a variety of reasons, I'm simply not able to call any of these hoaxes. To anyone applying reason in their thinking, to call something a hoax requires the intent to deceive, and the intent of each of these is unclear at best. Application of critical thinking here demands that an established pattern of deceptive intent is necessary to qualify something as being a hoax presented with the malicious intent to deceive. Certainly, there is reason to enhance audio, to bring faint noises from the background and make them more clear. However, when misused, audio will become distorted with artifacts of the process used when attempting to enhance it. I've demonstrated this before, and I have a brief demo here on our way through this story. Here, however, I want to help you learn to recognize for yourselves the signs of obvious embellishment of an audio track using a free tool called Sonic Visualizer, which I use to review audio when someone asks me to look into something as potential evidence. When you see the examples of embellished audio, you will see clearly that the audio is intentionally modified, and the only thing we cannot be certain of is why it was done. However, if you have authentic audio of the subjects, why would you bother to lipstick the pig and add junk on top of what may be the most valuable recording you have, reducing its value and bringing into question its origin? The lesson here is to vet everything presented by anyone. Whoever is presenting you with some kind of evidence may be sincere in their belief of its veracity. That does not mean they are right, and that does not mean they intended to deceive you if it turns out to be fabricated. They may genuinely believe they have something interesting, and they recorded something that someone else did. If you just want a good story, heck, none of this matters. If anything is presented as potential evidence, however, it is subject to investigation by those who would take this subject more seriously. And if it is fabricated, regardless of the reasons, someone's going to figure that out in time. I'm going to start with some examples of genuine audio recorded at a single location. I'm going to describe in what ways I have enhanced this audio. It was recorded by Brent Dill, the Tall Ones, and I've recorded many hours in the same area. What you see here is audio that has been amplified, and some noise reduction and or some bandwidth limiting has been done. You'll see brighter bands horizontally where there is more signal or more noise, and vertically you'll see bands where I've done enhancement on part but not all of the audio. What I want you to notice here is the horizontal band of background noise. It represents the noise particular to this specific area. It is certainly similar to the background noise in many other areas. It cannot effectively be used to identify a specific area. As I will show shortly, however, it can be used to identify if sounds have been recorded in different areas or at different times. Here we have an owl scream recorded by Brent Dill near Ashford, Washington. All of these coyote and owl segments are recorded on the same night. The first is the natural recording off the parabolic microphone. The second is enhanced by amplifying it and by limiting the frequency band. There are other owls. Now, you can see the background signature of this location. There's a peak frequency range. It is unfortunately right at the same level as most common owl and canid vocalizations. Makes it very difficult to drag them up out of the noise here. Here's what it sounds like. You can hear that owl right here. Now, how do we know that's an owl? Because we heard it again a few weeks later at the same location. Definitely an owl. That makes it a little easier to see. Alright, here we have that coyote serenading Brent. This is a little earlier in the night. I was probably still here at the time, but I'm just using Brent's recording. This is the same location. You can see the same band of background noise, the same general structure of the background noise. In this first segment, I have, distorted the sound trying to enhance it, trying to bring out just the coyote and none of the noise. And this is the principal problem with trying to get rid of the noise when the vocalization is in the same sound range. You'll hear how this is distorted. This is close to what I'm calling crystal coyotes. You'll hear there's a very tinny kind of a crystalline sound. In this second enhancement, I've amplified it. I've done a little bit of noise reduction, but I've done band limiting around the vocalization I want. And that distorts it a little bit less, actually quite a bit less. Here's what it sounded like. These calls are very similar to the Klamath sounds and the Puyallup sounds, and honestly, when we were there, it sounded like a coyote being ripped to pieces, but it went on for, over an hour. It's creepy as heck from a distance, but I got a lot closer during the drive out, and I was able to hear very clearly it was a coyote that was probably just about 200 yards, maybe 100 yards off the road. Okay, here is distorted enhanced. I've actually heard a couple of paranormal channels do this a little further. You can hardly tell it's a coyote at all after they're done with it. And then they ask, what could possibly make this sound? A coyote and an idiot with some electronic and some software and too much time on their hands, and maybe not knowing what they're doing, or maybe knowing exactly what they're doing and hoaxing you. This is a simply awesome clip collected on the parabolic microphone. It's about 20 or 30 minutes after the owl scream, and it is the whole coyote family getting together for a song under the full moon. Here's what it sounded like originally. In the second version, I have amplified it and I've done some noise limitation in the middle. I've done mitigation of noise. So these vertical bands come from not eliminating the noise here and trying to reduce the noise through this segment. Let's hear what this all sounds like. Now honestly, I hardly need to enhance this, but we can also see it's the same location, the same signature of background noise, the same general overall spectrum of background noise. There's not as much road noise from the highway that you could still hear in the other audio, even though it's several miles away. Here's the enhanced version. Now I want to do that one more time. I want to set the scene again for you. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. You're asleep in your tent. It's a quiet night. You can hear some owls in the background. A few minutes ago you heard a scream. It's an owl. But you're not necessarily sure it's an owl. You haven't heard an owl make that sort of noise before. And then a few minutes after the owl, you have this. So in this specific area, this band of noise overlaps the common calls of many owls and canids. It makes it all but impossible to drag out distant calls and eliminate that noise without distorting the sound you want to hear. This kind of noise is naturally random. It cannot be systematically subtracted, except, of course, in movies and dramatic TV shows. The brighter vertical bands indicate where I have amplified sound, and the noise it contains came along for the ride. The horizontal band remains, making it reasonable to infer that the sound is not otherwise modified. Ah, the mushroom hunter. Phil at Para Breakdown did a marvelous job of documenting the source of this audio with the help of the nerd cloud. Somewhere on Earth is someone who, collectively, know every segment of every bit of media created, and one of them identified the movie this roar came from. Let's have a look. The next one I have for you is the mushroom hunter. Part of this was obviously recorded in the wild. It's a different location than the coyotes that I've shared with you already. A different signature of the background noise. The effect is very, very clean. It's mostly limited to just the sound of the effect itself, so it's been cleanly overlaid. And it makes it hard to distinguish if it was recorded naturally or if it was overlaid on the original sound. But since we know what the sound effect came from, let's just enjoy the effect. Yeah, that's awesome. But it's a dinosaur from a B movie. Now, up to when this video was published, The channel it was on had nothing related to Bigfoot. This looks like a simple prank. But it's unclear if the target of this prank was friends and family or was Bigfoot enthusiasts. It clearly benefited from the Bigfoot enthusiasts. This is the Roger Patterson bell tower recording. It's unclear exactly what was done to create this. To be honest, I first remember hearing this sound in the news in Washington State sometime back in the 70s. Terrifying howls recorded from the area of Lake Stevens in Snohomish County about 50 years ago. It's been used in many places since, 70s movie and documentaries, and certainly I've heard it used for call blasting. Now, back in the 70s in the news, it's pretty clear to me now. Someone hoaxed that news story and the media bit off. Let's have a listen to how this works. Next I have for you something called the Patterson bell tower recording. Now this was recorded at a bell tower that gives us a bit of a clue. I think this was recorded by pulling a rope through a board or a piece of metal through a hole and tying that to a resonating chamber like a bell tower. And it's an awesome effect. Here we go. So now we have our first work of genuine fakery. This sound was recently presented as having been recorded on a cell phone near Granite Falls, Washington. When questioned about obtaining the original recording, the presenter said very clearly that the audio within that video, which you will see here and here as well, was original and had only been amplified. Well, now you're going to get to see what the spectrograph looks like, and that statement is patently false. Here is the first of our obvious hoaxes. Now remember what I said about the background signatures of any given location. There's 1, 2, 3 different locations. Now these brighter bands may be simply amplified, or they may be overlaid on another part of a recording. Can't really tell here, but these are between 1 and 3 segments recorded at the same location, overlaid on sound that comes from a different location. And we start off with even a third location for some reason. This doesn't happen by accident. This was deliberately mixed, overlaid, and rendered as a single audio file. This is ostensibly recorded from near Granite Falls in 2019. Unfortunately, the artist who created it says that this is the original audio recorded on a cell phone. Well, we can see that's not true. He said that he only amplified part of it. We can see that that's not true. Let's have a listen to the final product, because it is a work of art. Now, remember, I'm not judging why this was done. I'm just saying that I'm willing to bet the howls probably came from someplace like Sasquatch Bioacoustic. The birds and other things may be part of that recording, may have been added in. There are several layers here. It's not a bad work, and when you listen to it, it sounds like maybe parts of it were only just amplified. But when you look at it, you can see this has been mixed and blended with sounds from 3 or 4 different locations, maybe 4 or 5 different locations and or different times. And it's good work. I'm not judging why it was done. It's just not authentic. Now, looking at the channel where this is presented, we find a situation a bit like that of the Mushroom Hunter. There's no other Bigfoot-related content up to this creation. We do find, however, the channel of someone who is a music enthusiast and almost certainly has the skill set to compose different audio tracks together. What is different here is that the video is posted on a Bigfoot social media forum, so it is clear the audio is fabricated, and it was deliberately posted in a forum where Bigfoot enthusiasts would find it. I still call it just a prank because there is no clear malicious intent. This next one, the last one, was the very first segment of audio that I looked at. The very first time I went to look for audio that might genuinely have something related to Bigfoot on it, I was dubious because it's so busy. But I looked anyway, and I was stunned. I was genuinely stunned. This doesn't happen by accident. It's deliberate. However, it's also been used as part of a documentary related to Bigfoot phenomena. So in the documentary, it was not vetted. It was not examined in any way whatsoever. It was just dropped in with the probable intent of just including any evidence that we've been presented by friends of the channel, and, well, you can decide for yourself what you want to think of it. It's okay. That's, well, it's tabloid journalism, but it's entertainment, and that's what they're about. Alright. This is so busy. This is, well, it is a work of art because it was not recorded in the wild, at least not in one session. Let's see how many places and or times we have here. There's one. This may be a separate place or it may be part of that signature. Let's call that 1. 2, 3. I think this is a 4th time or at least location. At least 4, maybe 5. And there may be different recordings from different times at the same location here. So there's at least 5 different sources of audio here. Now, there's 1, 2 layers that have been thrown in, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's at least 6 layers of audio rolled in from at least 4 different locations or different times. It's really busy. I mean, there's a lot going on here. There's a lot going on from every different layer. It has a kind of a jungle motif to it, but honestly, it's too busy. It honestly sounds more like you're sitting in a kennel than even sitting out in a jungle. I'm not judging why this was presented anywhere it was presented. I'm just saying that it's very patently, obviously not naturally recorded. It is absolutely fabricated. It is a work of art, and let us hear this work of art. That actually is awesome, don't you think? The channel is not alone in the supermarket tabloids of Bigfootery. I honestly see nothing wrong with what they're doing. At least on the surface, they're well-meaning. They appear to simply want to bring their audience whatever pleases them. There's nothing malicious in this. There's no intent to deceive on their part. They're just completely unfiltered from what they present, to come from anyone who wants to step into the stream and muddy the waters. It's not for me, but it is for a lot of people, and that's cool. I mean, it really is. Now, I can't speak to the intent of the channel that fabricated the segment originally, but they've removed a lot of their content, including this. In the end, it doesn't matter why people fabricate media that later gets presented as evidence as Bigfoot, with people trying to consume all of it. There's clearly a market for Bigfoot-related entertainment, and clearly many are willing to indulge this market with material for their consumption. In its very nature, this must include those willing to pose as investigators and fabricate stories around their adventures in the forest, where they camp out and ostensibly look for Bigfoot. This is precisely why anyone wanting to take the subject seriously will need to take it upon themselves to vet anything they want to consider, to determine if it can produce useful evidence or not. And this is why some of us are taking our marbles and moving down the road a ways. We'll be dismissing all of the known sources of crap, which, for all intents and purposes, is pretty much everything out there in social media in the world of Bigfootery. Quality information is found out there in the range of parts per million, and the time required to vet every tidbit is prohibitive. When we find someone has fabricated data, we will simply ignore anything that subsequently comes from them. There's nothing inherently wrong with them fabricating stories to meet the endless market for Bigfoot stories of all kinds. But they present no value to the actual research of trying to understand what's really going on out there. It is unfortunate that this may be confusing to anyone new to the subject, trying to discern anything that might be factual out of all that mess. But that's the nature of life, and it always has been. Now, some have talked of a war brewing. Some are mocking the idea of critical thinking. It's a good thing we have all those critical thinkers out there. One mocks what one cannot assail with facts. This is the good old crutch of dehumanizing the enemy, even if they are only perceived as an enemy. You'll find that those speaking of the war brewing are also the ones who have been, or aspire to be, the gatekeepers of Bigfoot stories and information, and want to retain that position. They decry how other people are trying to make themselves the gatekeepers of Bigfoot info, hoping that you don't notice that's what they're actually trying to be. It's time, however, for there to be places where one can find what little information actually exists, and to find places where people are trying to take the subject seriously rather than presenting everyone with a form of kumbaya story time. The market for fact-based information is inherently small. The storytellers are not going to lose anything. And the war they seem to want is just another story they can tell. Just a way they can hold on to an audience with little interest in reality anyway. It's just another way they can play the victim they believe they are and thread the story behind the story. Populism and facts rarely intersect. I am the curious cryptid, and, on occasion, I enjoy a good story myself. But I have taken an interest in trying to understand the reality of the subjects, and so I have little time for mass fabrications that flood the subject of Bigfootery. Entertainment can and should mix reality and fantasy to their own tastes, but actual research must simply be rooted in objectivity and dismiss fabrications and fantasies.